Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast with Jay Gordon Duncan. And if you're wondering why the J, the answer is I'm not a bagpipe player. And if that joke doesn't make any sense, I encourage you to check out episode 0, where I explain that joke, as well as the purpose of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast, where we talk about faith, family, fitness, finances, and sometimes fun. Well, welcome everybody back to the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast. Thank you so much. And I begin every single show by saying thank you. Again, since we've gone to the video and the audio format, and the amazing Shane Dale has helped me with production, so many of you are listening, the numbers up. It means a ton to me. Thank you. But I quickly want to get to our guest. I've been promising you a great guest coming, and he is a new friend of mine named Jay Lee, the Sales Ninja. You're going to learn all about him. But real quick, I want to say, Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Jay, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself for a minute, but I've got to tell you a brief story. I met you just 45 days ago, and you were doing a sales psychology course, and you were doing a little bit of your backstory, and you were a minister. You remember running at a deficit, week to week, month to month, trying to serve, taking your kids places and going to the grocery store and wondering whether the credit card was going to decline. But you were also gifted at sales, and now that's what you're doing in a large way to enable the ministry you have. And my first thought was, did I just meet my new best friend? Because we have a parallel story, but you're way ahead of me in terms of aspirations. So it's exciting to meet you and see what you've been through and where you're going. But the rest of the crowd who listens to this hasn't had the privilege of hearing as much of that. Do you mind giving us just a brief introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My pleasure, Gordon. And thanks for having me on the show again. Really glad to be here and wanted to share, and inspire any of you here. I love the podcast name. So basically my background is I was an introvert, believe it or not. An introvert turned into a banker. From a banker, I became a pastor. And after doing 10 years of full-time pastoral ministry and, for many years struggling to raise support, I was down to about $1,000 a month in my salary. I live in Toronto, Canada. Average home is over $1.5 million for not even a nice home. So the living costs are very high. And like Gordon was saying, I had to put some items back, or the credit card got declined more times than I would like to admit. And I remember making a vow to God and saying, God, if you give me the ability to generate wealth and resources, my passion and my mission is to help the next generation and struggling entrepreneurs to break that generational poverty. So that's always been my heart. Didn't know that would actually happen. And then I got into, I guess, what you call high ticket closing, which is basically selling or being a salesperson for coaches that sell high ticket offers at a couple of $1,000s. And I accidentally and maybe mistakenly stumbled across, almost 6 figures in the first month and past six figures in the next month part-time.
Amazing. Jay, it's exciting to see and hear your arc, because I think I've shared with you, I went from being full-time minister 18 months ago and then jumping full-time into what had been my bivocational or side gig or hustle, whatever you want to call it. And initially when I did that, it's survive, right? Like just, it was like church planting all over again. Like, can the bills get paid? But working with you and then coming into really 2022, I'm just now really getting a sense where what I'm doing at Capitalize can serve people more so than just can I make some money. And I'm in a place where I do want to care for my kids as they go to college and better prepare for whatever they want to do in weddings and I'm 51, whatever the back 35 years look like. But it's exciting to begin to see that I could do that and it have a missional sense of serving and caring for others. Man, there's so many things I want to ask you. When did you get that sense that what you're doing now in terms of sales training and high ticket closing could also be that service offering that you have?
I don't ever look at anything in life differently from ministry. Like, even though I was quote unquote in full-time pastoral ministry, and now that I'm quote unquote out of pastoral ministry, I don't think you can take the ministry or the pastor out of anyone that's called, because everyone is called with the gifts of God and the grace of God on people's lives. Everyone has different and special gifts on their lives, and we're supposed to be faithful with little and entrusted with much. So whether it's collecting the garbage, whether it's doing office work, whether it's delivering newspapers or pizza, like everything that we can do it for the glory of God and do it to the best of our ability. And I always say to my kids, leave the washroom in a better state than when you entered.
Right. Well, and I mean, I've seen you in the training calls that we're a part of, and at any point in time, I don't know how many are in there, 8, 10, 20, 25, and you're doing that. I mean, people are bringing honest questions to you about how they're trying to grow their business or their ministry, and you're offering real practical, on the moment help that's enabling them to make a shift. You did that with me just the other day. I believe it was someone had given me a no, and you quickly, they were like, I want the quick answer. That's all. I'd pay for the quick answer. And then you gave me an approach or how to follow back up with them. How did the skills of quote unquote full-time ministry help you move into the skills of what you're doing now? What were the parallels, or what did you see that was similar in the two?
Great question. So in ministry or the full-time pastoral role, my last position was as a regional evangelist for all of Canada. So I call myself the reluctant evangelist or the accidental evangelist. And the joke in my movement was, you get around Jay, he breathes on you, and you come to know Jesus, that kind of a thing, right?
Wow.
So in the 10 years, there was probably over 43,000 conversations, over 5,000 people equipped across North America, because I did all these, workshops and seminars and traveled all across west to east coast and down to New York and LA and North Carolina. And I would talk at conferences where there was, hundreds, if not, thousands of people, and got a lot of people trained, and saw literally people, like over 10,000 people, make professions of faith. I don't know beyond that, because, who knows what's beyond our reach, and only God knows. But just having a lot of conversations and doing your reps and building relationships, and, with even sharing and demonstrating the love of Jesus Christ, which is unconditional. It's kind of like a hard sale, and some would even call it impossible, with people who are not open, people who are of different faiths and backgrounds. So I come with an approach of having tried things and been very harsh and saying turn or burn kind of a thing, which doesn't work very well. Or, hey, let me walk alongside you. If it's more of a longer relationship, if it's a shorter one, what's next in terms of what the next dopamine hit is. And then as you go across that sliding scale with people who don't know Jesus, death. And in sales, it's just moving people along and pushing that ball down the court, if you will, to help them realize that you have a solution in your coaching practice that can really transform their lives, to save them time, save them money, buy them back time, and make them money.
Yeah, solve a solution, offer a solution to a problem is always the heart at basically every sale, and also the heart to anybody who might want to come worship. I mean, this is the need I have. Where's that need met? Hearing your story that we referenced earlier about just the struggles and doing the amazing work you're doing financially. Now that I'm on this side of ministry, if you will, my children are older, I share some of the more challenging times that they may not have been aware of when they were younger. And during the housing crisis down here in 08 and 09, we made the house payment. The 3 credit cards were completely maxed. And there was less than $100 in the bank, and there was nothing in savings. There was that day you looked at it and you're like, I got nowhere to go. And a friend literally that day knocked on the door and handed me a check for $1,000, unsolicited.
Oh.
Just one of those moments. They knew me, of course. They knew how difficult life circumstances ministry was, and so we shared that story with the kids that just being sustained in those miraculous moments. Jay, along your lines of before you made that leap to where you are now, and you were doing the reluctant evangelism, did you have moments like that?
Hardships and struggles and
Moments where you're
doubt.
like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay the next bill, and then somehow it got paid. Those kind of things.
Oh yeah, I mean, it felt like I don't know if it was a daily thing, but a struggle that was very real for 10 years. I mean, there were 4 seasons of the 10 years where I was not making any money for 9 months at a time, 4 times. So I call that, looking back, spiritual pregnancy. God testing me and saying, do you really love me? Will you feed my sheep? I'm like, yeah, but how do I feed my sheep?
Right,
How do I
right.
feed my children? And so after having to return groceries or not being able to make payments or, being afraid to make purchases at the grocery store and having those declined or, not being able to put as much gas I need to. So there were many times where I was just like, I don't know how we can make this happen and how we can make this work. And I just said, God, I'm going to continue doing what you want me to do. I'm going to do my best, even though it seems like it's not going to work out. I want to worship you, whether we're broke, whether we're not broke, in the good times, in the bad times. I want to continue to have the posture of worship and glorifying you, because when you are faithful with little, God will entrust you with much. And so, as of actually this week, believe it or not, with all the $1.5 million average homes here in Toronto, with being in a lot of debt and not making a lot of money and being in a lot of need, my wife told me that we are mortgage free this week.
That's incredible. Wow. Congratulations. Thank God. All that comes along with that. That's a transformation. So that's ring the bell. Yeah, that's encouraging and inspiring for me in my journey. So, well, I think one of the ways you're doing it, and just getting to know you in this brief amount of time, and you've written about it, is that you see yourself as a heart-centered entrepreneur. I think those are your words. How would
Yeah.
you describe that? How would you describe being a heart-centered entrepreneur?
So that's a great question, Gordon. So a lot of times when you go into like sales calls or someone is trying to quote unquote pitch you, you'll have people on one end that is trying to deliver a product, solve a solution that you're facing, and then force the card out of your wallet or push you along the finish line to, regardless of if you're a good fit or not, regardless if you don't have enough money, and they're kind of, it's a means to an end a lot of time, and you are that dollar bag that they see at the end of the day. And so when I look at sales and on, that heart-centered leadership, it's the opposite of pitching. Selling is a lot of times just pitching, and in sports, when you do baseball, the goal of the pitcher, this is story time with Sales Ninja, is the person out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the sport of tennis, you serve, and then you have a back and forth volley where you have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation and you kind of see, have fun, play
Mm-hmm.
along the way, listening to them, listen to learn, not listen to sell. And serving is, selling is really serving. And then if it's not a good fit, if it's not the right timing, if they're not coachable, then I'll say, listen, I don't think we're a good fit. I don't think, you'd be, the right timing right now. I disqualified someone else in another program that I was selling for, and they were quite, what's the word, offended by the
Mm-hmm.
3 things that I said that they needed to do change. And they came 3 months later into the program and they hit like $20,000 in their first 30 days because they had the right
Mm-hmm.
posture, positioning, and the heart. And all that to say with the heart centered leadership is, if we can, or when we can detach ourselves from the money, when we can detach ourselves from the materials, and we can put people over profit, transformation over transaction, that's what's been working really, really well for me.
I love that, Jay, because when you are selling, or when you are presenting, or serving, um, the temptation is ABC, right? Always be closing. That you've got to close at every
Yeah.
moment. And if you're not planning on closing that moment, it's requiring faith in one of two things. It's well, I'm not going to close right now because I got faith in myself to come back around and close it, or I've got faith that God's got this lined up for me, or the right clients for me, or the right people to serve. So I've heard you say that sales without faith is dead. So for any of my listeners, there's a verse in the Bible that says faith without works is dead, which talks about we demonstrate our faith by the life that we live and then how we serve. What do you mean by sales without faith is dead?
Yeah, I'm probably going to write a book on that and probably do a TEDx talk on that. I have a TEDx
please.
Coach and an international bestseller that's going to be coaching me on this as well. So sales without faith is running on the idea of that faith without actions, or faith without works is dead. So two things. To sell more, to give more, is when you think about the word sales without faith is dead, when you do not believe in yourself or have faith in yourself, sales will not happen. Mm-hmm. When you don't believe or have faith in the coaching solution that you have for the person that is on the other side of the call, then it'll be very difficult to sell. But when you have faith in yourself, that God has brought you on this earth as special, loved, and a gift, when you believe in the gifts that God has gifted you and realize that the gift is from the giver and not, look at me, look how great I am, look at all the work that I've done and all the accreditations and the podcasts and the degrees that I've accumulated. It's the gifts of God, and to be able to believe that the giver is a giver of all good gifts. So it's all about, it may sound like semantics, but when we understand the true source of power and our faith is placed in that power, which is God, for me, in terms of my faith in God, that the ideas of selling, the ideas of handling objections, the ideas of lead generation, the ideas of messaging, the ideas of serving to sell, it becomes fun, it becomes playful, it becomes easy, it becomes, the no is like, okay, so Gordon, you said no, that's fine. Why? I'm just trying to understand why you're saying no. What? Maybe I didn't do a good enough job sharing the value of how I can help you save time, save money, build relationships, or whatever it is that situation that you're in. So let me go back a little bit before I let you go, so I can help the next person if I'm not being clear in the value that I offer. So I want to learn every single call, and there's no pressure. And so you get to play in the playground and learn.
In church planting, which I know you're familiar with, so we planted 2 churches, and there was, at least for me, 2 types of desperation. There was just a selfish desperation. This has got to work out. Is there in the first church plant? It was literally, is there anything left in the bank account this month? That I could have a check. I mean, that happened at times. And so the desperation was, this has got to work out. It's got to work out. Works out. And then there was times where it was a holy desperation, where like, God, I really want to see what you're going to do here. The holy desperations were probably the best moments, because I was so eager to see what God was going to do. And then the selfish desperations were painful and absolutely scary. When you're training, and I know this is my paradigm, but I hope it makes sense, how do you move people from that first one, where they're so desperate for the close, to sales without faith is dead? I mean, how do you move them towards a faith-filled sales that maybe is a holy desperation? How do you make that shift with folks?
That's a great question. That's a difficult question to answer. I think when you can answer the questions that we discussed earlier, which is, do you really believe and have faith that you are called to do what you're doing, right? If that why is not strong enough, then you're going to keep trying. And even though you might be the hardest working person in the room, it might be like selling ice to Eskimos. There might not be a starving crowd to have a market demand, and not knowing when to pivot is really important. So when you're called and you know your why, it makes it a lot easier, because a lot of people teach grit. A lot of people teach that passion and perseverance, which I 100% agree and live by. But when the why and the focus is not fueled properly, then it becomes a lot of hard work, which becomes burnout. For me, my wife, my family cannot stop me from working because I'm playing, and there is no limitations. It's untapped potential. Like, I have to literally force myself to stop playing because I love playing. Like, not only in the business world, I love playing with my kids. I love playing sports. I'm just a big kid, a man child that loves to play, right? So when you can find the wonder of playing and having fun, then everything becomes a lot easier, because your vantage point is not really work.
Jay, towards that, when you're working with a client or someone who's very at the beginning, like they want to start a business or they feel like they have a service and they're at that groundwork, how do you help them see that it's fun? Because you're right, they've been taught, well, I know I'm going to have to work hard and those kind of things, but how do you help them see that it's fun?
That's a great question again. So I use something like the Ikigai chart, where there's 3 concentric circles. And basically one is, what can only you do that you do really well? What do other people say that you do really well? And what will people pay you to do well? It's not one of 3, it's not 2 of 3, but when all 3 match. So here is a story time, again, Sales Ninja story time. When you look at American Idol and Simon Cowell is on the panel of judges, and let's say, Susan goes on and she's singing, and she's not very good at singing. In fact, she's tone deaf, and she's like, super confident, super eager, super enthusiastic. And she does this performance, which Simon says, "Oh my goodness, that was awful. There's no reason why you should be singing on stage." And then she would respond, "That's not true. All my friends say I'm really good. My parents say I'm good. My siblings, my," and he would say, "Well, they're lying." Right? And so what can only you do really well? What do other people say you are doing really well? And what will people pay you to do? And all 3 of those, when you can find that sweet spot, zone of genius, superpower, whatever you call it, when they all combine into one place, it's easy. It's that life-giving fun of, you can do it easily. People will be willing to pay you. There's a demand for it.
That's helpful. Helpful for me, even here in this journey, and then helpful for hopefully anyone who's out there. What often battles fun is risk. I was recording a video earlier today, and the question to me was, what are small business or entrepreneurs most scared of? And I said, well, the quick answer is to run out of money, but I don't think that's the practical answer. I think the practical answer is risk. What risk to take and how much to risk. How did you, whichever one the case may be, how did you mitigate risk, or how did you handle risk? You're fun, you love to play, but risk was still there, had to be. And so how did you handle risk?
Risk is always there in life. Every single day, whether we're in a safe place, whether in a dangerous place, there's always risk. Mitigating risk is, taking calculated risks. So, I always try to look at what's the biggest ROI for the least amount of work. And if there is an investment, even if it's a large amount, will it return my investment and double it or more? And I look at proof, I look at case studies, I look at, testimonials. So in life, I'm not afraid. Like, for example, here's story time again. So, I bought several different winter jackets here in Toronto, Canada. It's still cold. I've bought, I won't name names, but jackets that are like, a couple hundred to, mid, like $500 jackets that were expensive. And I ended up buying a $1,000 jacket. Okay. And the reason why I bought a $1,000 jacket, and if you looked at it, you'd be like, how on earth is a jacket like that $1,000? It doesn't even look like $1,000 jacket. But number one, it's Gore-Tex. Number two, it's breathable. Number three, it's waterproof. Number four, it's light. Number five, if anything happens to it, there's a lifetime warranty. No hassle warranty. So true story. I had this jacket, and I think within a year, there was a rip inside the inside pocket. And then I called the customer service, and they did a no hassle replacement and gave me a better jacket. So what I did was, you look at $1,000 jacket, and you say, someone might say, I could have bought 5 $200 jackets, or I could have bought 2 $500 jackets, or there's no reason why I would buy a $1,000 jacket. But the way I see it is, I bought a jacket for life for $1,000.
See, I love this.
I took a risk.
I'm gonna take a, maybe this is detour, or maybe it applies or not. So I grew up in a situation. My parents' house was foreclosed on in 6th grade. I mean, it was a tough situation. Very loved, very fortunate to have 2 parents who loved me, but scrapped my way through college. I mean, a similar story a lot of people have, but it creates a lot of broke habits. And I call it broke habit is anything you do, like I'm going to grab, extra sauce at Chick-fil-A because because I don't have sauce at home. Like any tiny little thing you do. And because of that, I've often had a bad habit of buying cheap stuff. And breaking that broke habit is still in me even to this day. And with like running gear, running's my passion. I'm running in poor shoes, poor watches, absolute disaster. I get hurt and those kind of things. Did you come out of the situation, like when you were in that situation pastorally and the credit cards were maxed out, and did you fall into patterns of broke habits that you're having to learn now? The breakdown.
Yeah, so I grew up most of my life. I grew up most of my life with that poverty mindset. My parents were immigrant parents. We pretty much went to the discount thrift shops. I wore the clothes that were not popular, not name brand. They were the ones that lasted the longest, and no matter how much you tried to destroy them or make them dirty, they would just last forever because they were made of metal or plastic or something. It was terrible, and I just wanted them to rip apart so I can get a better pair of shoes or better set of clothes. So I grew up, and then I went to ministry, and my parents would say things like, because you are a pastor now, it's almost like a vow to poverty. You can't own certain things. You can't have certain kinds of clothes or cars, or you don't want to show off and boast. And I come from a Korean Canadian background where, it's, you got to humble yourself, you got to be meek, and all these wonderful things, but almost to a fault. And there's a dark side to it, as well as there's a restorative and redemptive side. And most of my life, I lived like that. And it's only in the recent past, or in the recent, where I've said, you know what, I'm going to redeem this for God's glory. And I'm going to be able to, make a lot of money without feeling any guilt, which is really hard for someone in ministry to do, and purchase things that are, very expensive, because I value the beauty and the quality of God's craftsmanship through his people. And so I have no problems dropping, higher amounts of money for different things like shoes. If you don't buy them properly, like you said, proper tools, I want to make sure that they last long. So I only want to try to buy it once.
In ministry, sometimes this was something that is imposed upon people I knew, and sometimes it's just in my brain. But almost anything I did outside of necessity with my time, or anything I purchased outside of necessity, there was a trigger in my brain that thought, what are people going to say? And that wasn't everybody. I mean, it's some wonderful people in the churches I planted. It wasn't everybody, but I had that same mindset. And I discovered a rationalization for almost anything I did. When we bought our house, here it's a great house in a great neighborhood, but I was quick to tell people, oh, we got this great deal on our foreclosure. I wanted to couch it in, no, you don't have to worry. I'm not making too much money. Don't worry. And a lot of that was my own internal idols of maybe worshiping people's opinions or trying to people please, but it was there. You're right. There was a ministry sense where you're being told, hey, you hit the median income, you're not going to get a raise anytime soon. Those kind of conversations. I love the paradigm. I'm going to ask you to reiterate it. Seeing God's beauty in things now that have value and are a little bit more expensive. I mean, if you're a good steward, I mean, do you still fight that though? Do you still have that internal struggle that you're kind of walking through? Because you're right, there are beautiful things out there that have value, and there's zero wrong with purchasing them. I'm almost preaching to myself. How do you still walk? How do you coach yourself through that now, Jay?
It's a struggle every day. I mean, everything I look, there's a lens that wants to default back to the old, but it says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the old is gone, the new has come, and I'm still trying to live in the new. And I'm not saying prosperity gospel or anything like that. I'm just saying, when God gives much, then it's okay. And I don't know if people teach this, but it's okay to be able to invest or purchase things that are of worth. Right. And I think God's handiworks and his craftsmanship is beautiful. And so when I look at different things that I want to buy, I mean, I do look at it through that old lens, and that old past comes back, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to spend that much money. But then I look at the value and the quality and the return, whether it's something that will appreciate or depreciate. I'll give you one example. Like, we had owned cars that were like over 20 years old, right? When we were in ministry, right? Like these are old cars, they're like clunkers, but we try to buy the best. Like we actually bought a used Camry, because we know that Camrys last forever, Toyotas. And it was a used car, and we came back from lunch downtown Toronto, and one of our leaders was passing by and saw our new quote unquote used car, and they were like, oh, whose car is that? And we're like, oh, that's our car that we just bought. It's a used car. And they're like, oh, we must be paying you too much.
I'm sorry.
As a pastor.
I'm sorry anyone ever said that to me.
And I was just like,
I'm sorry.
And I was just like, oh, I feel bad for even buying that now, right? And so you get judged because people look at you and they're watching you. And I had to actually sell that car because my wife said we need two cars. So I said, how much can we get for $14,000? Now I have $7,000 to buy two cars, and I ended up buying a van and an older car because we only had $14,000 to split between two cars.
Right. Wow. Yeah, you don't have to tell me. Do you enjoy the car you have now, Jay?
I have the Camry.
Do you still have the Camry?
No, I have a newer Camry, believe it or not. And the reason, I could have bought a higher model like a Lexus or whatever, but yeah, the value and the maintenance and all that. Yeah. It's not my dream car, but I'm being faithful with what stage I'm at and trying to live modestly.
Nice. I do want to speak to small business and entrepreneurs. That's one of the segment on This Is Gonna Hurt. We talk about faith, family, fitness, finances, and sometimes fun. So we talk about the struggle and how do you overcome it. It's the theme. And so there's a good number of small business owners, entrepreneurs out there. And whenever I recognize my weaknesses fairly well, but every now and then I get slapped with just a recognition of my own weakness. And day before yesterday, man, I had a strike of jealousy in me that I have not had in forever. I don't typically, I got lots of things I struggle with. Jealousy is not typically one of them. I'm typically a cheerleader, like, good for you. But it hit me. It hit me like, and just a reminder, just to keep track of my heart and to wrestle with it. You're coaching salespeople and business owners to grow their businesses and do good with the money that they earn. How do you coach your clients, or how would you coach a young business person that's giving it all, but they're struggling with jealousy when they see someone else's success? What would you say to them?
I would bring a story. Jesus brought narratives, and I always love sharing, instead of saying, being a judo master, you do this, you do that. I try to use stories and say, when I used to run in school and we used to have races, I was pretty fast. And so I would win races and stuff like that. And you know what happened was I actually started feeling sorry for people who were not winning. So I started to look back and let them catch up. And next thing you know, they started catching up and they started beating me. And I think that's what happens when we start looking at other people, we start comparing ourselves with each other, we lose, right? And really, I think God has called us to be faithful with little and trusted with much. So really, my only aim is to win the race, to win the prize. And my prize is Christ, and to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love my neighbor. If I love my neighbor and other people half as much as I loved myself, if not God, we'd be changed in the world one person at a time. So the only person that I look to is God, and how can I better myself each and every day, 1% better every day, and then God will take care of the rest.
It's really true that recognizing that it's true in any of our tasks, but in the small business entrepreneurial grind world, I mean, our path is our path. No matter what we see someone else, we can learn from them, and we should. We should say, okay, you're killing it. I don't want to be jealous of you. What, like, teach me, or what can I just see from observation? But it is hard sometimes that the blinders we have are like individual success, because it's so geared into what we do. Do you coach folks who aren't concerned with your faith, and they're like, just coach me like raw skills, Jay? Does that happen to you? And if so, or do you? I mean, how do you adjust, or do you adjust your training for that?
That are not of faith? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, they're not Christians, but they recognize your skills and go, Jay, we want your training, but we're not really looking for that aspect of it. How do you adjust your training when you do that, and what does that look like?
Great question. I think half of my clients are not of faith, and half of them are. So I look at it, God loves everyone, and my selling principles come from my faith and my my belief in God's word, and people can take it or leave it. The reason why they join is not actually so much my faith or my belief in God's word. They typically, when they see me either on platforms or live shows or Facebook lives, they'll say things like, I watched you, I really like the way that you spoke, I trust you, and like they say, you're a heart-centered leader. And so that's why I want to learn from you. And so I think when you have an attractive character where you come off as very honest, vulnerable, and I'd say, people look at me, they say, oh, you're crushing. I'm like, what? No way. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I don't even know what I'm doing. I just like a accidental, reluctant evangelist. I'm that accidental, reluctant salesperson that is still trying to figure out how this all works. And people, if I can just stay one step ahead of them, and when my clients win, I win. That's my why. Not when I win and make money off of them. It's when my clients win, they get results. When I saw you hitting your first client, I'm like, that's my win.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I got to admit today, I've coached or consulted in some realms since '03, but onboarding that new client today was incredibly excited. They were eager. I mean, I have the clients I will work with and the ones I don't. And one of the characteristics of the clients I will work with is that they're teachable. I mean, I don't want to wrestle people against their methodologies. And this new client was incredibly excited. They were saying to me, I'm excited about getting started with that. And I know what this client has told me they need, and their mission is incredibly, I get that. I'm excited to continue extending that on down. I want to jump way back and ask you a quick question. You mentioned North Carolina. You're in Canada. I spent my whole life in North Carolina up until 2013. We came in Virginia. What parts of North Carolina were you doing ministry in?
Raleigh. It was King's Church.
What years would that have been, Jay? Just when you were down in North Carolina?
2010-ish.
That's crazy. Jay, I'm pretty confident I was there. So the entire time I've been interacting with you, I've been wondering. My church plant was a suburb of Raleigh called Garner.
Okay.
And I knew the guys up at King's Cross pretty well. And in some wonderful providential way, we probably were at least in the same room back in '09, 10, 11, somewhere in that area. But I was
you know
wondering
Ron and
that.
Lynette Lewis?
Yes, I do. Well, there we go.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where I would go, and I would there'd be like student conferences that would have like 2,000 plus people, and I would hold workshops there.
Well, I don't know if they would remember me, but I remember that. So that's fantastic. That's really really great. I still have a very soft spot for Garner and that area outside of Raleigh, and it's wonderful. A lot of my family lives in that area, so providentially, that's kind of funny to think about. Well, I'm gonna do a slow descent here, Jay. You've got platforms. You've sent me those links, but as people want to interact with your sales training and learn a little bit about you, where's your home online that you want them to find you, and where's a good place?
Yeah, they can join my free Facebook group. If you just go to gosalesninja.com/Facebook group, you can find me in there where I just give tips, tricks, hacks, strategies. I do lots of lives. I'm going to launch a Sales Ninja show that I'm really excited about, where I'm going to do weekly trainings, and I'm going to put people in the hot seat. So I'd love to have you in there. We're going to put people in the hot seat and just answer questions on the fly, real time.
Please, that'd be great. I'd love to. Let me know. A quick question. One of the things that you and I talk about a lot is growing Facebook groups. It's a phenomenal way to keep a community connected. This is purely selfish, so it's my show. I get to ask you. If folks are going live in their Facebook group and they're just not getting the audience, I mean, just continue to tell them, just keep going live. Leave the content up there. Just keep going, and people will come back to it. What do you think? I mean, I know there's ways to draw a crowd in there, but let's say you have a couple events and 1, 2, maybe 0. Do you encourage people to just to leave that content up there and keep going it so that can people interact with it? What's your advice on that?
Test, iterate, and resonate. So
Okay.
test your messaging, iterate if it's not getting traction, and then once you have traction and it resonates, then you know you have proof of concept. And keep doing that. Alex Hormozy, and I highly recommend this plug in the $100 million offers.
Yes.
He says, if you have not tested out your offer at least 100 times, you haven't tried enough.
That book is phenomenal, everybody. It's the size of a children's book in terms of like how tall it is and how wide it is, but it may only be, I don't know, it's less than 100 pages, but phenomenal. In fact, it's taken off. I've seen a lot of people, just friends, recommend it. It's you can get it on Amazon. I think you can find it at tons of other places, but it is, and that testing your message 100 times is where your faith gets tested, because you just like I got
It
zero,
does.
I got zero, I got
Yep.
zero, and I get that. I've built, like everybody, I don't know how many ClickFunnels I've built, and then and then you build it and try it and test it. But I love that. So it was iterate and resonate. What was the first one?
So test, iterate,
Test.
and resonate.
Test, iterate, and resonate. That's fantastic. That's some good content. Jay, would you give? There's someone right now. They're getting ready to. They're thinking about starting a business. They feel passionate about it. Like, I think this is something that's really going to care and serve a lot of people. What would be just a couple of quick pieces of advice as they think about, am I going to take this leap and start a business? What would be just a couple quick things you would tell them?
Sales without faith is faith. Sales without faith is dead. So you need to and faith in the belief that God has gifted you with something, because unless you take that move, unless you take that risk, as we talked about earlier, unless you invest in yourself, time and money, you will never know what God can do. And one thing that I look back is, I'm as a futurist, I don't want to get to heaven and say these are all the steps of faith that I missed, but I want to take every single risk and to every step out of the boat. Like Peter walking out of the boat was my favorite story in the Bible, because out of the disciples, he was the only one that stepped out in faith and had that wow faith, walk on water faith. Not only did he defy the laws of physics and gravity when he stepped out onto the water to look at Jesus, when he plunged because he lost his faith and Jesus immediately reached down and grabbed him. He could have waited a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes, let him drink some bubbles and even die. But it says in scriptures, he immediately, that's God's heart for us, is he's going to help us. And not only did he walk on water once, he had to get back on the boat, so he walked on water twice. I think a lot of people forget that. So God is a God of second chances, and he's going to help you. And when you have faith, his grace will be abundant, his love will be extravagant, and his help will be excessive when we trust him, not ourselves, trust him. So I really encourage any of you who are thinking of taking that step of faith is to look to God, hear his voice, follow the call, and trust in him and his wisdom. And you can find other people that will help you along the way, that will accelerate your action and save you time, money, and headaches as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. Remind me again, I believe it's GoSalesNinja.com. Is that correct, Jay? Is that the best place to find you?
Yeah, GoSalesNinja.com /Facebook group.
Okay. And guys, definitely join that group. You're going to get an opportunity to interact with Jay and the great community that he's building around there of salespeople and sales trainers. Jay, I want to say thank you for all the assistance you've given me early on as I launched my program this week, and a lot of it was due to the help you offered. So I want to say thank you so much. I look forward to how it gets shaped going forward, but I appreciate it. Jay, any last things you want to offer for the audience? Anything you might want to contribute, or maybe something you're like, I really want to say this. I want to make sure we never left words unsaid. Anything out there?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is, people don't care so much what you say, but they really remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. So when you give them the experience and the love of God and the, not the salesy, sleazy, or slimy pitch, but that you really come alongside to serve them and to love them well, not only does it throw them off guard, they feel transformed. So I really want to encourage you guys to not just focus on your messaging, but make sure that your heart, that heart-centered leadership, that heart-centered entrepreneurship is there to really serve them well. And, my only debt in this life, at the end of this life, because the mortality rate is still 100%, is that I would have 2 words on my my tombstone, which is loved much.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, as we look at death is undefeated, so I appreciate that reminder of the way we should just squeeze out every single thing that we've got to offer for other folks and to God. So, Jay, thank you so much. I get the privilege of talking to you once a week, and I hope the community reaches out, finds you online, and gets to interact as well. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to talking to you soon. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast. We get together every single week. I appreciate it a ton. Always don't hesitate to reach out to me if you've got any questions or comments. And I look forward to what we have next week as well. But this was rock solid gold here, thanks to Jay. All right, guys, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later.
How do you shorten the time it takes to buy a car? Car buying just got easier. Pohanka365.com lets you complete as much or as little of the car buying process online. Pohanka365.com. Car buying simplified. Anytime, anywhere.